Shalom. So today we're going to look at Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7, verses 17 and 18. This is about the operation of the elements, right? So it says, "For he hath given me certain knowledge of the things that are, namely, to know how the world was made and the operation of the elements." He's going to break down it. The beginning, ending, and midst of times, the alterations of the turning of the sun, and the change of seasons, the circuits of years, and the positions of stars. So this is Solomon right here, right? The Most High showed him how things actually work, right? Now we're gonna examine these things that he mentioned. So when we're dealing with the beginning, the ending, and the midst, this is two ways, right? Because just as he showed Moses the creation and also the destruction of Babylon, right? That's one way of the beginning, the ending, and the midst. And also when you look at the year, you have the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the ending of the year, and how the elements changes during these how the elements change during these different events, right? So let's just jump to the book of Exodus, chapter 12 and verse 2. It says, "This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you." Now when you're dealing with this, right, what happens is that we need to understand the months of the year go by the moon, right? So this has to deal with a specific starting point and a specific ending point, right? Now the starting point here is, we're gonna call this the equator, as they call it, right? The neutral ground between the north and the south of where the sun travels, right? So when you're dealing with the beginning of the year, when the sun crosses from the south, right, crosses what they call the equator, that is the starting point. That is the zero balance between the north and the south, right? So here we have one. So they have like moon 1, moon 2, moon 3, moon 4, moon 5, moon 6, right? This is in the north. Now when the sun reaches here, this moon that is at the middle ground between the north and the south would be the first moon, right? So this would be the first moon of spring, right? Now let's just go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. It says, "And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day." Now when you're dealing with the first day, what has to happen is it has to be one, the first day. Two, it has to be the first day of the month, and also the first day of the year, right? Because what you'll find now is a lot of people there, when they start their year, you'll see that they're already in the middle of the month, but it's impossible. If you say March 21st is the beginning of the year, then it means the 21st of March has to be the first day of that month, of that first month, right? Now, what happens here is that the beginning, the first moon, comes with what he mentioned about the position of stars, right? Now, here at moon 1, I'm going to use the Roman names for certain reasons, right? Here we'll have the first set of constellations, second set, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, right? The first one here at the equator, the middle between the north and the south, they call Aries, right? The ram. Once the sun is passing through this, that is the beginning of the year. How do you know? Because there are 12 moons, and physically you cannot distinguish between, okay, this is the 6th moon or the 7th moon, or it's the same moon each time, right? But what changes is the constellation. Now let's jump to the book of Revelation, chapter 22, to get some more on this. Revelation 22, and we're going to start at verse 1. It says, "And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb." We know the throne is the heavens, the Shamayim. Verse 2, it says, "In the midst of the street, on either side, was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruits every month." Meaning, every moon, the constellation changes. Because when you read this, there is no physical tree on earth that gives fruit every month, right? So this is talking about the constellations. Every month it changes. So we have 12 months per year, 12 months each year, right? So we have 12 different set of constellations that the sun passes through, and that gives us change of season, right? So it says again, and on either side of the river was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. Right now, let's look at this. When the sun passes here in the north, this is the first day of what we call spring. The first day of spring. That's when it says the evening and the morning were the first day. What happens when this occurs in the south? Because it just says on either side. So it's going to be the opposite, right? So down here would be the first day of fall, right? And again, this first moon would be for them, what's it called? Aries, Gemini, Taurus. I don't remember what are these ones. Let me see. Alright, whatever. So what's when you have spring up here, they'll be having fall down here in the south, right? So it's gonna be the direct opposite. Now what you're gonna see that's very interesting is that it says in the midst of time, right? So in the middle, guess what happens? It's very interesting. Here, when the sun is at the most northern part, you call it Cancer, right? Cancer. So this is the same thing coming all the way around here. So again here you would have Cancer, right? Now in the south you would have Capricorn. It's interesting. After you finish the first 3 months of spring, the first month after spring, what would the constellation be? It would be called, the fourth one would be called Cancer, right? So Cancer and the next two set of constellation would bring you summer months. So right here you would have summer, right? And this is happening in the north. Right now, on the opposite side, after 1, 2, 3 months here would be fall, right? And the 4, 5, and 6 months here would be what? Winter, right? Winter. Amazing. So we have Capricorn here, and this is why they call it the Tropic of Capricorn, and up here they call it the Tropic of Cancer, right? So the Capricorn is closer towards the south. The Cancer is towards the north of the equator, right? And this is where the sun travels, and this is why the countries that are here, we have the sun directly over our heads. Also, this explains why the first day of spring we are able to tell, because of the east. The sun rises directly in the east when it is spring, right? So when the sun crosses the equator, right? When the sun crosses, it rises directly in the east. What happens is that for people that live in the north, the sun has to start traveling north of the east first for them to start get the warm. And this is why you see places like Canada and certain places in America, so forth, they start to get warmer months like down in April, because even in March it can be really cold still, right? Now let's look at something interesting, because when people go on the internet and they look up photos of spring, they will see this beautiful field, flowers, everything, but that's not the beginning of spring, because you cannot jump out of winter today and tomorrow all your vegetations come back, right? You have to go through a process, right? There's a process that takes place between. So let's look at what happens in spring. What is the temperature like in spring? And this is with Peter. We know that this was happening at the Passover time, and we know the Passover also. Let's go to the book. We know the Passover is in the spring, the first month of spring, right? This is Mark chapter 14 and verse 54. It says, "And Peter followed him afar off, even in the palace of the high priest, and he sat with the servants and warmed himself at the fire." Now come to think of it, why would Peter be warming himself with fire in the land of Israel, which we know as Africa at that time? Because the beginning of spring is not very warm. You're just coming out of winter. You're transiting. There's a transition from winter into spring. So yes, even 2 weeks into spring, it's not going to be much difference. Not going to be much different, right? So the idea that we have of spring is not biblically correct, right? So here, after the sun rises in the direct east, what happens is it starts traveling towards the north. It starts traveling towards the north, right? And this is when people in places like Europe, North America, Canada, they get to enjoy the warm weather for probably 6 months. We who are here in the tropics, we don't go through autumn, winter, spring, summer. Our seasons is just going to be between rain and dry. We don't look for a particular time of the year for spring, right? We just expect the rain or no rain, and that is our season, right? So that's what it's talking about when it talks about position of stars. As you can see, there are 12 set of constellations. However, what is happening in the north and the south, they are the direct opposite. So this is why when we have spring, they have fall. When we have summer, they have winter, right? Because in the summer, the sun goes directly north, right? And it's beyond the view of those who are in the south. And this is why you have the longer periods of light and dark, depending on where you are. So this is what happens with people in the north and people in the south, right?